Introduction: the weight we don't see. Right now, as you're reading these words, you're carrying more than you realize. Not just your phone or this device, but invisible burdens that have become so familiar you've forgotten they're there. These aren't just thoughts or feelings. They're entire ecosystems of pain that have taken up residence in your nervous system, shaping every decision you make, every relationship you enter, every opportunity you see or don't see. The art of letting go isn't some mystical practice reserved for monks on mountaintops or people who achieved enlightenment. It's a practical, learnable skill that separates those who move through life with lightness and possibility from those who drag themselves forward, weighed down by yesterday's disappointments, last year's betrayals, and decade-old wounds that still bleed fresh. Most people spend their entire lives never mastering this art. They accumulate emotional debris like hoarders collect objects, storing every slight, cataloging every failure, preserving every moment of rejection in perfect detail. They become walking museums of their own suffering, offering free tours to anyone who listen, but never actually clearing out the exhibits. But here's what changes everything. Letting go isn't about weakness, surrender, or pretending things didn't hurt. It's about refusing to let your past dictate your future. It's about understanding that you can honor what happened without being imprisoned by it. It's about recognizing that the weight you're carrying isn't protecting you from future pain. It's preventing you from future joy. Chapter 1. The Invisible Architecture of Attachment. Your brain is an attachment machine. Every single day, it's forming bonds, creating associations, and building neural pathways that connect experiences, emotions, and meanings. This isn't a design flaw. It's what kept your ancestors alive. The ability to remember that certain berries were poisonous, that specific animals were dangerous, that particular people couldn't be trusted. This was survival intelligence. But in the modern world, this same mechanism has become a trap. Your brain still operates like you're navigating a prehistoric landscape, where every threat needs to be remembered forever. Except now, instead of actual predators, you're cataloging emotional predators. Instead of poisonous plants, you're avoiding situations that might lead to rejection. Instead of dangerous territories, you're steering clear of vulnerability. The problem is that your attachment system can't distinguish between what's genuinely dangerous and what's just uncomfortable. It can't tell the difference between actual threats and emotional triggers. So it treats everything with the same level of seriousness, encoding every painful experience with the same intensity as life-threatening danger. This is why you can have a panic response to a text message. Why a certain tone of voice can send you spiraling. Why seeing someone who reminds you of your ex can ruin your entire day. Your nervous system isn't overreacting. It's responding exactly as it was designed to respond when it perceives threat. The issue is that it's perceiving threat everywhere. Dr. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory reveals that your nervous system operates on 3 levels: social engagement when you feel safe, mobilization when you sense danger, and shutdown when you feel overwhelmed. Most people carrying significant emotional baggage spend their entire lives oscillating between the last 2 states, never fully accessing the safety and connection available in the first. Your body literally cannot distinguish between remembering a traumatic event and experiencing it fresh. When you replay that argument, that breakup, that humiliation, your stress hormones spike exactly as they did during the original event. Your heart rate increases. Your muscles tense. Your digestion stops. Every single time you rehearse that memory, you're essentially re-traumatizing yourself, strengthening the neural pathways associated with that pain. This is the hidden architecture of attachment. It's not just that you remember painful things. It's that your entire system reorganizes itself around those memories, creating elaborate defense mechanisms designed to prevent similar pain in the future. These defenses made sense when they formed. They were adaptive responses to real threats. But over time, they become more restrictive than protective, more limiting than liberating. The walls you built to keep out pain are now keeping out possibility. The shields you raise to protect your heart are now preventing connection. The strategies you develop to avoid getting hurt again are now guaranteeing you'll remain isolated, guarded, and fundamentally alone even when surrounded by people. Chapter 2. The Physiology of Holding On. Most people think letting go is a mental or emotional process, but it's fundamentally physiological. Your body stores trauma in ways your conscious mind doesn't even recognize. Chronic tension in your shoulders from years of carrying stress. Digestive issues from suppressed emotions. Shallow breathing patterns developed during periods of anxiety that became your default even after the crisis passed. Dr. Peter Levine's somatic experiencing work demonstrates that trauma literally gets stuck in your body. When you experience overwhelming situations, your nervous system goes into survival mode, fight, flight, or freeze. But if the threat is psychological rather than physical, if it's betrayal rather than a predator, your body activates these responses without any physical outlet for them. The result? Incomplete stress cycles that remain active in your system. Your body is still prepared to fight an enemy that's no longer there or flee from a danger that ended years ago. This incomplete activation creates chronic dysregulation that manifests as anxiety, depression, hypervigilance, emotional numbness, or explosive reactivity. When you hold on to emotional pain, you're not just thinking about it occasionally. You're storing it in your tissues. Your fascia tightens around it. Your muscles contract to protect it. Your breathing shallows to avoid feeling it. Your entire physical structure reorganizes itself to accommodate this pain, creating postural patterns and movement restrictions that reflect your psychological restrictions. This is why talk therapy alone often fails with trauma. You can understand intellectually why you should let go, but if your body is still holding the experience in its tissues, that intellectual understanding won't translate to felt change. Your nervous system will continue operating from the old pattern because the somatic imprint hasn't been addressed. The vagus nerve, your body's primary pathway for nervous system regulation, becomes dysregulated through chronic stress and unprocessed trauma. When vagal tone is poor, you lose the ability to accurately assess safety. Everything feels threatening, even neutral situations. Your window of tolerance, the range of emotional intensity you can handle while remaining regulated, becomes narrower and narrower. People with significant emotional baggage often develop what appears to be emotional instability, but it's actually nervous system dysregulation. Small triggers create disproportionate responses not because they're overreacting emotionally, but because their nervous system has lost capacity for greater response. Everything becomes either shutdown or explosion with very little middle ground. Your breath patterns are a direct reflection of your emotional state. When you're anxious, you breathe shallowly and rapidly. When you're depressed, you breathe slowly and minimally. When you're holding on to old pain, you're unconsciously holding your breath throughout the day, creating chronic oxygen deprivation that affects your energy, clarity, and emotional resilience. The heart's electromagnetic field, measured by the Institute of Heart Math, is affected by your emotional state and actually influences the electromagnetic fields of people around you. When you're carrying unresolved pain, your heart rhythm patterns become chaotic and incoherent, affecting not just your own well-being, but the nervous systems of everyone you interact with. Chapter 3. The Psychology of Meaning-Making. Human beings are meaning-making machines. We don't just experience events. We immediately create narratives about what those events mean about us, about others, about the world. A breakup isn't just a relationship ending. It becomes evidence that you're unlovable. A professional failure isn't just a setback. It becomes proof that you're not good enough. A betrayal isn't just someone else's choice. It becomes confirmation that people can't be trusted. These meanings become more powerful than the actual events. You're not really attached to what happened. You're attached to what you decided it meant. This distinction is crucial because events are fixed, they happen and can't be changed, but meanings are fluid. They're interpretations, not facts. And interpretations can be questioned, examined, and ultimately transformed. Dr. Albert Ellis' rational emotive behavior therapy identified core irrational beliefs that create emotional disturbance. I must be thoroughly competent and successful. Others must treat me fairly and kindly. Conditions must be favorable and easy. When reality violates these musts, people create suffering not from the reality itself, but from their insistence that reality should be different. The meanings you attach to your experiences become self-fulfilling prophecies. If you decided after betrayal that people can't be trusted, you'll unconsciously test every new person to confirm this belief. You'll interpret ambiguous behavior as suspicious. You'll preemptively withdraw before anyone can hurt you. And when relationships inevitably fail because of your defensive patterns, you'll use this as further evidence that your original meaning was correct. This is called confirmation bias, your brain's tendency to seek, interpret, and remember information that confirms pre-existing beliefs while ignoring or minimizing contradictory evidence. Once you've created a meaning, your mind becomes a lawyer arguing for that meaning rather than a scientist objectively examining reality. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and creator of logotherapy, discovered that even in the most horrific circumstances, humans maintain the freedom to choose what their experiences mean. Between stimulus and response, he wrote, "There's a space, and in that space lies our freedom and power to choose our response. This space is where the art of letting go actually happens." Most people never examine the meanings they've attached to their experiences. They assume their interpretations are objective reality, rather than subjective constructions. Someone who was criticized harshly as a child might carry the meaning, "I'm fundamentally flawed," into every area of adult life, without ever questioning whether that childhood conclusion still served them or was even accurate in the first place. The process of meaning revision involves stepping back from your automatic interpretations and asking, is this meaning true? Is it useful? Is it the only possible interpretation? What else could this experience mean? What would a person who loved themselves believe about this situation? What would someone not carrying my particular wounds conclude from these same facts? Your identity is built entirely from the meanings you've accumulated. You're not a fixed self. You're a collection of stories you've told yourself about who you are based on what's happened to you and what you decided those happenings meant. Change the meanings, and you literally change who you are. Chapter 4. The economics of emotional investment. Every minute you spend dwelling on past pain is an investment, not a passive holding pattern, but an active allocation of your most precious resources, attention, energy, time. The question isn't whether you're investing these resources. You're always investing them somewhere. The question is whether you're getting a positive return on that investment or throwing good energy after bad. When you replay old arguments, you're investing in resentment. When you rehearse past failures, you're investing in self-doubt. When you catalog ways you've been wronged, you're investing in victimhood. These investments compound over time, but instead of growing wealth, they grow poverty of spirit, imagination, and possibility. The sunk cost fallacy, identified in behavioral economics, explains why people continue investing in losing propositions. Once you've invested significant time or emotion into something, your mind irrationally concludes that you must continue investing to justify the initial investment. People stay in bad relationships, toxic jobs, and destructive patterns not because the future looks promising, but because they've already invested so much in the past. This same fallacy applies to emotional baggage. You've spent years being angry about that betrayal. You've invested tremendous energy into your identity as someone who was hurt. You've built elaborate defenses based on those old wounds. Letting go feels like all that investment was wasted. But the truth is exactly opposite. Continuing to invest in expired emotional positions is what wastes those resources. Every moment you allocate to past pain is a moment unavailable for present possibility. This isn't metaphorical. Your attention has a literal capacity limit. Neuroscientist Daniel Kahneman demonstrated that humans have a finite attention budget. When significant portions of that budget are allocated to monitoring for threats, processing old hurts, or maintaining defensive postures, you have less available for creativity, connection, learning, and joy. The opportunity cost of holding on is everything you could have become, experienced, or created if that energy had been available for something generative rather than something protective. You'll never know what opportunities you missed because you were too guarded to notice them. You'll never know what relationships could have flourished if you'd had the emotional capacity to fully show up. You'll never know what you could have achieved if you weren't using your resources to maintain old fortifications. Your emotional energy is like financial capital. It can be invested wisely for compound returns or squandered on depreciating assets. Past pain is the ultimate depreciating asset. It loses value over time but requires increasing maintenance to preserve. The longer you hold it, the more expensive it becomes and the less it's worth. Smart investors know when to cut their losses. They don't hold losing positions hoping they'll eventually turn around. They recognize that preserving capital for better opportunities is more valuable than trying to recoup losses from bad bets. The same wisdom applies to emotional investment. Cutting your losses on old pain isn't admitting defeat. It's freeing up resources for opportunities. With the return on investment for letting go is immediate and multiplicative. The moment you stop allocating energy to old wounds, that energy becomes available for everything else. Your creative capacity expands. Your relational capacity deepens. Your resilience strengthens. Your possibilities multiply. This isn't gradual or incremental. It's exponential because freed attention has compound effects across every domain of your life. Chapter 5. The practice of conscious release. Letting go isn't something that happens to you. It's something you do. It's a practice, not an event. A process, not a destination. Most people wait for the desire to hold on to disappear before they start letting go. But it works exactly backward. You practice letting go, and then the attachment dissolves. The foundation of conscious release is creating what psychologists call distress tolerance. This is your capacity to experience uncomfortable emotions without immediately trying to fix, avoid, or suppress them. Most people's letting go attempts fail because they approach difficult emotions with urgency and desperation. They need the pain to stop right now, which paradoxically keeps them locked in struggle with it. Distress tolerance means developing the capacity to be uncomfortable without it being an emergency, to feel sadness without needing to immediately cheer yourself up, to experience anger without having to act on it or push it away, to notice fear without letting it control your choices. This isn't about becoming numb. It's about developing emotional flexibility and resilience. The practice begins with what mindfulness teachers call noting, simply naming what you're experiencing without judgment or elaboration. Anger, sadness, fear, resentment. This simple act of naming creates psychological distance between you and the emotion. You're not anger. You're the awareness that notices anger arising. This distinction is everything. Once you can observe emotions without being consumed by them, you can begin the process of conscious release through what I call completion breathing. Emotions are designed to move through you, not stay in you. The word emotion comes from the Latin movere, meaning to move out. But most people interrupt this natural movement by holding their breath, tensing their muscles, or distracting themselves. Completion breathing involves consciously breathing into the physical location where you feel the emotion. If sadness sits heavy in your chest, you breathe directly into that heaviness. If anger burns in your solar plexus, you breathe into that fire, not to make it go away, but to allow it to complete its natural cycle. With each exhale, you consciously release attachment to the story behind the emotion while honoring the feeling itself. The difference between emotional processing and emotional rumination becomes critical here. Processing moves through the body and completes. Rumination stays in the head and perpetuates. When you notice you're thinking about an emotion rather than feeling it, that's rumination. When you're experiencing sensations in your body and allowing them to move without creating elaborate narratives, that's processing. Another powerful practice is what Fritz Perls called the empty chair technique. You imagine the person you need to let go of sitting in an empty chair, and you speak to them. Say everything you've never said. Express every feeling you've suppressed. Then you sit in the other chair and respond as that person, giving yourself the acknowledgement, apology, or understanding you've been waiting for. This allows you to complete unfinished emotional business without requiring the other person's participation. Journaling as release works when you write not to preserve your thoughts, but to empty them. Write until there's nothing left. Then physically destroy what you've written, burning it, tearing it up, or throwing it away. This physical act of destruction signals to your nervous system that you're releasing this material, not storing it for future reference. Movement practices, dance, shaking, yoga, martial arts, allow emotions to move through your physical body rather than staying trapped in your mind. Your body knows how to release what your mind can't figure out. When you move with the intention of allowing emotional energy to flow, you're working with your physiology rather than against it. The ultimate practice is what Buddhists call radical acceptance, not agreement or approval, but complete acknowledgement of what is. The past happened exactly as it did. That person acted exactly as they did. You felt exactly what you felt. Fighting with this reality keeps you bound to it. Accepting it, truly accepting it, creates the space for something new to emerge. Chapter 6. The timing of transformation. There's a season for everything, including letting go. Try to release pain before you fully acknowledge it is spiritual bypassing. Try and hold on after you processed. It is self-sabotage. Understanding where you are in the cycle of healing determines which practices will serve you and which will harm you. The first phase is acknowledgement. Before you can let anything go, you must fully own that it happened and that it mattered. This isn't about wallowing. It's about honoring your experience with complete honesty. Many people skip this phase, jumping immediately to, I should be over this by now, which is just another form of self-abandonment. Acknowledgement requires sitting with uncomfortable truths. Yes, that betrayal devastated you. Yes, that failure shattered your confidence. Yes, that loss changed you fundamentally. Rushing past these acknowledgments to get to the healing part is like trying to build a house on sand. You need the solid ground of truth before you can construct anything lasting. The second phase is feeling. Not thinking about feelings, but actually feeling them in your body. This is where most people get stuck because society taught us that emotions are problems to be solved rather than information to be processed. We medicate, distract, rationalize, and suppress rather than simply allowing ourselves to feel. Feeling requires creating enough safety in your nervous system that you can approach difficult emotions without being overwhelmed. This might mean working with a therapist, practicing in small doses, or ensuring you have supportive people around you. The goal isn't to be consumed by emotion, but to build the capacity to experience it fully and let it complete its natural cycle. The third phase is understanding. Once you've felt your emotions without resistance, your rational mind can examine the experience for insights. What was the situation trying to teach you? What patterns were at play? What role did you play versus what was beyond your control? Understanding isn't about blaming yourself or finding fault. It's about extracting wisdom from pain. This phase requires brutal honesty about your own contributions to difficult situations without falling into self-blame. Most painful experiences involve a complex interaction between your patterns, others' choices, and circumstances beyond anyone's control. Sorting out what belongs where is essential for preventing repetition without taking on inappropriate responsibility. The fourth phase is meaning revision. This is where you consciously choose what your experiences will mean moving forward. You acknowledge what happened. You felt your feelings about it. You've understood the dynamics involved. Now you decide what story you'll carry forward. Will this betrayal mean all people are untrustworthy, or that you learn to recognize red flags? Will this failure mean you're incompetent, or that you have the courage to take risks? The meanings you assign determine everything that follows. This isn't about positive thinking or putting a silver lining on tragedy. It's about refusing to let painful experiences define you in limiting ways. You can honor what happened while choosing empowering interpretations that serve your future rather than imprisoning you in your past. The fifth phase is integration. This is where your new understanding and revised meanings actually become part of how you operate in the world. You don't just intellectually know you've changed. You actually behave differently. You make different choices. You respond to triggers with new patterns. You embody the growth rather than just understanding it conceptually. Integration requires repetition and practice. You'll encounter situations that trigger old patterns, and you'll have opportunities to respond differently. Each time you choose a new response instead of the old one, you're strengthening new neural pathways. Each time you notice yourself falling into old patterns without judgment and consciously shift, you're rewiring your brain. The final phase is release. This is where letting go happens naturally, almost without effort. You've processed the pain, extracted the lessons, revised the meanings, and integrated new patterns. What's left to hold on to? The charge is gone. The person or situation that once dominated your thoughts becomes increasingly irrelevant. You can remember what happened without re-experiencing it emotionally. True release feels like indifference, not like forgiveness or effort. You're not trying to let go anymore. You simply don't care in the way you once did. The story has lost its power. The person has become psychologically irrelevant. The situation has been integrated as one chapter in a much larger story rather than the defining narrative of your life. Conclusion: the freedom that awaits. Everything you've ever wanted, every version of yourself you've dreamed of becoming, every possibility you've imagined, it's all waiting on the other side of letting go. Not as a reward for good behavior or spiritual achievement, but as a natural state that emerges when you stop carrying what was never yours to carry in the first place. The weight you've been dragging through life isn't protecting you. It's exhausting you. The walls you built aren't keeping you safe. They're keeping you small. The stories you've been telling about why you can't move forward aren't truth. They're habit. You are not what happened to you. You are not the sum of your wounds. You're not defined by who left, who stayed, who loved you, or who failed you. You are the awareness that can observe all of these experiences, learn from them, and choose something different. The art of letting go isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world taught you to hold on so tightly. Before betrayal taught you to guard your heart. Before failure taught you to play it safe. Before rejection taught you that you weren't enough. That person is still there, underneath all the protective armor. Still creative, still open, still capable of tremendous joy and connection. Still ready to move through life with the lightness that is your birthright. Every master of this art will tell you the same thing. The moment you truly let go is the moment everything changes. Not gradually, not eventually, immediately. Because you're not waiting anymore for the past to be different, for people to apologize, for wounds to magically heal themselves. You're finally, courageously, choosing now over then, possibility over certainty, freedom over familiarity, life over the story about why you can't fully live it. The art of letting go is the art of coming home to yourself. And you're ready. You've always been ready. You just needed to realize that the key to your cage was in your hand the entire time. Chapter 7. The neuroscience of emotional freedom. Your brain is not a static organ. It's a dynamic, constantly rewiring system that responds to every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every action you take. This phenomenon, called neuroplasticity, is the biological foundation of letting go. Understanding how your brain actually changes in response to emotional experiences transforms letting go from an abstract concept into a concrete, achievable process. When you experience something emotionally significant, your brain creates what neuroscientists call an engram, a physical trace of that memory encoded across multiple neural networks. These engrams aren't just stored in one location. They're distributed throughout your brain, connecting the hippocampus where narrative details live, the amygdala where emotional intensity resides, the prefrontal cortex where meaning-making happens, and various sensory cortices where the sights, sounds, and sensations of the experience are preserved. This distributed storage system is why traumatic memories feel so visceral and complete. When triggered, the entire network activates simultaneously, making you feel like you're re-experiencing the event rather than just remembering it. Your body responds as if the threat is present. Your emotions surge as if the hurt is fresh. Your thoughts spiral as if the danger is real. This isn't memory malfunction. It's your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do, keeping you vigilant against threats that harmed you before. But here's what changes everything. Every time you recall a memory, it becomes temporarily unstable, a process called memory reconsolidation. During this window of instability, the memory is vulnerable to modification. If you recall a painful memory while in a different emotional state, while feeling safe instead of threatened, supported instead of alone, capable instead of helpless, you can actually change how that memory is re-encoded. This is the neurobiological mechanism behind effective trauma therapy. The goal isn't to erase memories or pretend they didn't happen. It's to update the emotional and somatic components of the memory, so they no longer trigger your survival responses. You can remember what happened without your nervous system treating it as a current threat. The memory becomes integrated as something that happened in your past rather than something that's happening to you in your present. Dr. Richard Davidson's research on meditation and the brain reveals that sustained attention practices literally change the structure of your brain. Regular meditators show increased gray matter density in regions associated with emotional regulation, decreased activity in the amygdala during emotional provocation, and stronger connections between the prefrontal cortex and limbic system. These aren't just temporary states. They're permanent structural changes that make emotional regulation easier and more automatic over time. The default mode network, a system of brain regions active when you're not focused on external tasks, is particularly relevant to letting go. This network is responsible for self-referential thinking, rumination, and the constant mental chatter that keeps you stuck in old patterns. When this network is overactive, you spend excessive time replaying the past, rehearsing imagined futures, and reinforcing limiting narratives about yourself. Mindfulness practices, focus attention tasks, and flow states all decrease default mode network activity. When you're fully present, engaged in meaningful activity, or deeply absorbed in creative work, your brain literally stops running the old stories. Over time, these practices weaken the neural pathways associated with rumination and strengthen pathways associated with present moment awareness. The prefrontal cortex, your brain's executive control center, plays a crucial role in letting go. This region is responsible for perspective taking, reappraisal, and conscious regulation of emotional responses. When your prefrontal cortex is well developed and properly connected to your emotional centers, you have greater capacity to observe your reactions without being controlled by them. You can recognize when you're being triggered by old patterns and consciously choose different responses. But chronic stress, trauma, and emotional overwhelm actually impair prefrontal cortex function. When you're in survival mode, your brain prioritizes immediate threat response over thoughtful analysis. This is why it's so hard to think clearly when you're emotionally activated, why you might say or do things you later regret, why old patterns seem to take over despite your best intentions. Healing the nervous system and reducing chronic stress literally improves your capacity for conscious choice. Neuroplasticity works in both directions. Just as repeated practice can strengthen healthy neural pathways, repeated rumination strengthens pathways associated with pain. Every time you rehearse old hurts, replay past arguments, or imagine worst-case scenarios, you're essentially training your brain to be an expert at suffering. This is why breaking rumination patterns is so critical. You're not just changing your thoughts. You're literally rewiring your brain's default patterns. The hippocampus, crucial for memory formation and context, can actually shrink under conditions of chronic stress. But it can also regenerate through neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons. Exercise, learning, novel experiences, and stress reduction all promote hippocampal neurogenesis. This means that even if trauma has impaired your brain's memory systems, you have a capacity to rebuild them through intentional lifestyle choices and healing practices. Chapter 8. The Social Dimension of Release. Human beings are fundamentally relational creatures. We develop in relationship, heal in relationship, and discover who we are through relationship. This means that letting go, while deeply personal, is also inherently social. The presence or absence of safe, supportive relationships dramatically affects your capacity to release old pain and move forward. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby and expanded by Mary Ainsworth, reveals that your earliest relationships create templates for how you relate to yourself and others throughout life. If your caregivers were consistently responsive and attuned, you likely develop secure attachment, a felt sense that the world is safe, people are trustworthy, and you're worthy of love. But if your early relationships were inconsistent, neglectful, or harmful, you may have developed insecure attachment patterns that make letting go significantly more difficult. Anxious attachment creates a constant fear of abandonment that makes you cling to relationships even when they're harmful, overanalyze every interaction for signs of rejection, and struggle to trust that people won't leave. Avoidant attachment creates emotional distance as a protection mechanism, making you uncomfortable with vulnerability, quick to dismiss the importance of relationships, and prone to leaving before you can be left. Disorganized attachment, often resulting from trauma, creates a painful paradox where the people you need for safety are also sources of fear. These attachment patterns aren't character flaws. They're adaptive strategies that helped you survive difficult circumstances. But as an adult, they often create the very outcomes you're trying to avoid. Anxious attachment pushes people away through neediness. Avoidant attachment prevents the intimacy you secretly crave. Disorganized attachment creates chaos in relationships that could otherwise be healing. The good news is that attachment patterns can change to what's called earned secure attachment. By experiencing consistently safe, attuned relationships as an adult, Whether with a therapist, partner, friend, or community, you can develop the internal security you didn't receive in childhood. This isn't about finding someone to rescue you or fix you. It's about experiencing relationships where you're truly seen, accepted, and supported, which allows your nervous system to recalibrate what's normal and safe. Dr. Stephen Porges' concept of co-regulation explains how we use other people's nervous systems to regulate our own. When you're with someone who is genuinely calm and grounded, their physiological state actually influences yours. Your heart rate can synchronize. Your breathing can entrain to theirs. Your nervous system can borrow their sense of safety until you develop your own. This is why the right therapeutic relationship can be so powerful. It's not just about what the therapist says. It's about the felt experience of being with someone who remains regulated while you explore painful material. Their nervous system provides a biological anchor that allows you to venture into territory you couldn't navigate alone. But co-regulation can also work in reverse. When you're constantly around dysregulated people, those who are anxious, reactive, or chronically stressed, their states can dysregulate you. This is why protecting your relational environment is crucial during healing. You need people who can hold space for your process without making about them, who can witness your pain without trying to fix it or minimize it, who can celebrate your growth without feeling threatened by your changes. Letting go often requires grieving, and grief is fundamentally social. Anthropologist Margaret Mead observed that healthy cultures have communal grieving practices, rituals that bring people together to witness and support each other through loss. Modern Western culture has largely lost these practices, leaving people to grieve alone, which often means not grieving at all. Finding or creating spaces where you can be witnessed in your grief, where your pain is acknowledged as real and significant, where you don't have to pretend to be over something before you actually are. This social witnessing is itself healing. When someone truly sees your pain and doesn't turn away, doesn't try to fix it or minimize it, just acknowledges it as real and valid, something profound happens. You feel less alone. Your experience becomes legitimate. Your pain becomes bearable. Social comparison can either support or sabotage letting go. When you compare your healing timeline to others, when you judge yourself for not being over something as quickly as someone else, when you feel shame about still struggling with something you think you should have released, you're adding suffering to suffering. Everyone's healing journey is unique. The depth of your wound, the resources available to you, the support you have access to, your nervous system's baseline regulation, all of these factors affect how long healing takes. There's no prize for rushing through grief or pretending to be healed before you are. Chapter 9. The Spiritual Paradox of Surrender. Every wisdom tradition, from Buddhism to Christianity, from Taoism to Sufism, addresses the paradox of letting go. The more you try to control, the less control you have. The more you grasp, the more slips through your fingers. The harder you fight reality, the more you suffer. This isn't just philosophical speculation. It's a description of how consciousness actually works. The ego, your sense of separate self, exists through contraction and grasping. It maintains itself by creating boundaries between self and other, by building identity through preferences and aversions, by constantly evaluating experiences as good or bad, wanted or unwanted. This constant evaluation and grasping is exhausting. It's like swimming upstream against the flow of life, using tremendous energy to maintain positions that life is constantly challenging. Spiritual surrender doesn't mean giving up or becoming passive. It means releasing the illusion that you can control what's fundamentally uncontrollable. You can't control what other people do. You can't control whether you get sick, whether relationships last, whether your plans unfold as intended. You can't control the past because it's already happened. You can't control the future because it hasn't happened yet. The only thing you can actually control is your response to what is. Acceptance, in the deepest sense, is the recognition that reality is already exactly as it is, and your resistance to that fact doesn't change it. It only adds suffering to pain. Pain is inevitable. Someone you love will die. Relationships will end. You'll experience failure and disappointment and loss. These are non-negotiable aspects of human existence. But suffering, the mental and emotional anguish you add to pain through resistance, is optional. When something painful happens and you spend weeks, months, or years arguing with reality about whether it should have happened, replaying how things could have been different, resenting the universe for allowing it, you're creating suffering. The painful event is over. The suffering is current and ongoing. It's what you're doing to yourself right now by refusing to accept what already happened. This doesn't mean liking what happened or agreeing it was right or fair. Acceptance isn't approval. It's simply acknowledging what is. The relationship ended. The betrayal happened. The opportunity was lost. The person died. These are facts. Your acceptance or rejection of these facts doesn't change them, but your acceptance or rejection dramatically changes your experience of them. The spiritual practice of letting go involves developing what Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki called beginner's mind. This is a capacity to meet each moment fresh, without the accumulated baggage of all your previous experiences. To see this person in front of you as they actually are right now, not through the filter of how they hurt you before. To approach this opportunity as itself, not as a chance to replay old failures or vindicate old disappointments. Beginner's mind requires tremendous courage because it means giving up the false security of your predictions. When you've decided that all people are untrustworthy, you know what to expect. You're never surprised. You're never vulnerable, but you're also never truly connected, never genuinely intimate, never fully alive to the actual possibilities of this moment. The spiritual traditions also teach about non-attachment, which is widely misunderstood. Non-attachment doesn't mean not caring. It means caring deeply while recognizing that everything is temporary, everything changes, and grasping creates suffering. You can love someone completely while knowing they will die. You can pursue goals passionately while holding your plans lightly. You can invest in relationships fully while understanding they may not last forever. Non-attachment is about enjoying the rain without demanding the sun never come out. It's about loving the spring without resenting the winter. It's about fully inhabiting your life exactly as it is right now while remaining open to it becoming something different. This requires developing what philosophers call equanimity, the capacity to remain centered and balanced regardless of external circumstances. Not because nothing affects you, but because you've developed an unshakable inner stability that can weather any storm. Equanimity comes from repeated practice of meeting difficult experiences without being destroyed by them, celebrating joyful experiences without clinging to them, and recognizing that both pleasure and pain are temporary visitors, not permanent residents. Chapter 10. The Practice of Continuous Letting Go. The final understanding about letting go is that it's never finished. Life continuously presents new attachments, new hurts, new disappointments that require release. Mastering the art of letting go isn't about reaching a state where you never hold on again. It's about developing the skills to recognize when you're grasping and the capacity to open your hand voluntarily before life pries it open forcefully. The most accomplished practitioners of letting go aren't people who never get attached. They're people who notice attachment arising and can meet it with curiosity rather than judgment. They recognize the familiar feeling of starting to grasp, to control, to hold tight, and they have practices that help them release before the attachment hardens into suffering. Daily practice is essential. Just as you wouldn't expect to stay physically fit by exercising once, you can't expect to maintain emotional freedom without regular practice. This doesn't mean spending hours in meditation, though that can certainly help. It means bringing awareness to the small moments throughout your day where you're holding tension, nursing resentment, replaying old hurts, or trying to control what's uncontrollable. A simple practice. Several times throughout your day, pause and scan your body for tension. Where are you tight? Your jaw? Your shoulders? Your belly? That physical tension often corresponds to mental or emotional grasping. As you notice the tension, take a deep breath and consciously release it. This simple practice trains your nervous system to let go in real time rather than accumulating stress throughout the day. Another practice, keep a letting go journal. Not a record of what happened, but a place to consciously release what you're holding. Write down what you're ready to release. Then ceremonially destroy the page. Burn it, tear it up, throw it away. This physical act signals to your subconscious that you're truly releasing this material, not just thinking about releasing it. Develop awareness of your triggers. What situations, people, or experiences tend to activate old patterns? When you know your triggers, you can prepare for them. You can enter potentially triggering situations with practices already in place. You can recognize when you're being activated and consciously engage your regulation strategies before you're overwhelmed. Create letting go rituals for major transitions. When a relationship ends, when you leave a job, when you move to a new place, consciously mark the transition. Honor what was. Acknowledge what you're releasing. Set intentions for what you're moving toward. These rituals don't have to be elaborate. They just have to be intentional. Recognize that letting go happens in layers. You might think you released something, then find yourself triggered by it months or years later. This doesn't mean you failed. It means there's another layer ready to be released. Each time you encounter an old pattern at a deeper level, you have the opportunity to release it more completely. Surround yourself with reminders of impermanence, not in a morbid way, but in a way that helps you stay present to the temporary nature of everything. The changing seasons, the phases of the moon, the cycle of birth and death in nature. These natural rhythms can help you remember that everything arises, exists for a time, and passes away. Nothing stays the same. Fighting this fundamental truth creates suffering. Accepting it creates freedom. Practice gratitude alongside letting go. They're intimately connected. When you can genuinely appreciate what you have right now, knowing it's temporary, you're practicing both gratitude and non-attachment simultaneously. You're fully present to the gift of this moment without demanding it last forever. Develop compassion for yourself in the process. You'll hold on when you know you should let go. You'll get triggered by things you thought you'd released. You'll fall into old patterns even after you've learned new ones. This is all completely normal. Progress isn't linear. Healing isn't a straight line from suffering to freedom. It's a spiral where you encounter the same themes at deeper and deeper levels, each time with slightly more awareness, slightly more capacity, slightly more freedom. The ultimate practice of continuous letting go is learning to release your attachment to how you think your life should be and fully embrace your life as it actually is. Not someday when circumstances change. Not after you fix this or achieve that. Right now, exactly as you are, exactly as your life is. This moment is the only moment you ever actually have. Every other moment exists only in memory or imagination. When you're fully present to this moment, holding it lightly, appreciating it fully, letting it be exactly what it is, you're practicing the art of letting go in its highest form. And in that space of complete presence and acceptance, you discover something profound. The freedom you've been seeking isn't somewhere else. It's not in the future after you've let go of everything. It's here, now, in your capacity to be fully present to whatever's arising. The cage was never locked. The weight was never as heavy as you thought. The past never had the power you gave it. You've always been free. You just had to learn to recognize it. And now you know. The art of letting go isn't about losing anything. It's about recognizing what you never actually had to carry in the first place.